In nearly every case, you will receive quantitative information in the form of graphs and tables to show the interviewer your analytical skills. We have seen a graph once at the beginning, but there's more now.
Thanks, Flavio. I'm interested in information about the people, specifically our workers in the factory, especially around their productivity. Maybe we will find the bottleneck there. Do you have any data for me?
Here's the data I got for you. What can you tell me about it? Hopefully, you'll still remember the 4 steps of reading a graph. They can be useful here again. Pause the video and follow the 4 steps. Obviously, you cannot ask clarification questions since this is a video, but it's good practice to write any questions down. Extract the insights, summarize, and provide your next steps. Then watch our candidate do the analysis.
I see 2 different graphs here. The bar chart shows the number of workers at the company every year from 2018 to 2021. Can I assume we are in 2022 here?
Yes.
Okay, we can also see a line showing the evolution of the output per worker. I assume that's a measurement of how productive each worker in the factory is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks Flavio. In the second chart, there is a line graph showing how many hours per day the factory is operating on average each year. Alright, clear. The question we are trying to answer here is whether the people component is the root cause of the bottleneck in manufacturing. On the left, I can see that the company is hiring more employees each year, but this seems to be impacting the output per worker. Maybe we are adding more workers to increase production, but the marginal impact of each worker is less and less. My hypotheses here are that the workers we hire are less capable and productive than the average worker we have, or that something else might be limiting productivity, such as our machinery or supplies. On the right, I can see that we are already utilizing the factory's capacity at its maximum, so there is no room for improvement there. To summarize, we have evidence that the bottleneck problem might be related to a decreasing quality of the workforce or to limiting factors in other productive resources. As the next step, can we check the supplies data? I'd like to see if we are receiving them in the right quantity and quality.
Once again, we can see that our candidate has confirmed his understanding of the data while extracting all of the important insights from the data and their evolution. Using the hypothesis-driven approach, the candidate makes an additional data request to continue the analysis and find the root causes of the manufacturing bottleneck.
Here is the supplies data for you.
Thank you, Flavio. So we have a table about supplies with the evolution per year of 4 different metrics. Orders measured in 1,000 tons. How much of those raw materials were delivered, also in 1,000 tons? The average delivery time of these raw materials in days. How many of those raw materials needed to be returned to the supplier, in 1,000 tons? The first thing that catches my attention is that every order our client has placed has been completely delivered. This means that the supplier isn't facing issues delivering the amount of raw materials we need to build the tubes ordered by our client's customers. Second, the delivery time doesn't seem to be changing much throughout the years. And third, returns are not significant in the first year and decrease to 0 in the following years. This probably means that there isn't an issue with the quality of the raw materials. But I have one hypothesis. Maybe we are ordering fewer supplies than we should, given our demand. Going back to the first exhibit, our demand increased from 150 to 250,000 tons per year. But we ordered only 230,000 tons of supplies in 2021. But this would not be a problem if we could have used the excess stock we had accumulated over the past years, since we often ordered more than necessary. A quick math check shows that the overordered supplies from 2020 could already cover the lack of supplies in 2021. So assuming the supplies are of the same kind and did not expire, which I guess is the case with metal and such, my conclusion is that we had enough supplies. I'd like to change the focus to the machinery next. The hypothesis now is that we don't have enough capacity to fulfill the demand. Do you have any tables that show how the capacity and utilization have changed over the years?
Once again, you can see the candidate beginning by explaining how they understood the data displayed in the table and recapping the question. He always looks at the data with the focus question or hypothesis in mind. He analyzes the evolution of each metric and how they could have impacted the issue we are trying to explain, the manufacturing bottleneck. And he also creates a new hypothesis on the fly about the quantity of supplies possibly being insufficient and connects data from different exhibits to test it. Finally, the candidate drives the case by creating a new hypothesis about the machinery and making a logical data request. Our client has sent machinery data. What insights and conclusions can we reach? Pause the video and extract as many insights as you can. This time, try communicating your understanding out loud as you would in a real case. Remember, practice is key to improving.
I see a table that has 3 variables related to the factory's machinery and their developments. Number of machines, average output per machine, maximum potential capacity of the factory if running 24/7. The question we want to answer is whether the machinery is the bottleneck in manufacturing. If I remember correctly, our client's demand for tubes in 2021 was 250,000 tons, and our maximum capacity for that same year is 160,000 tons, so there is a gap of 90,000 tons that needs to be addressed. If all machines have the same capacity, I can infer that each machine produces 20,000 tons at their maximum capacity. The average output per machine is increasing and almost maxed out at 19,000 tons per machine, so there's not a lot of room for improvement there. I can conclude that the number of machines, which stopped growing at 8, is our bottleneck, and we need to add more machines to solve the problem. More precisely, 5 additional machines to close the gap of 90,000 tons and have some spare capacity. As next steps, do we know if we can add the machines to the existing factory, or are there any limitations since they stopped growing the number of machines even though the demand was clearly exceeding the supply?
The candidate did a good job by reading the chart, recapping the question, and extracting insights, for which he had to do some math. He then drove the case with a potential solution, followed by the next steps, which included a data request. Our client just told us that the factory has no more space for new machines. After evaluating some options, they've decided to outsource production to a partner. Here are some partner options we have according to the company's location. Pause the video to extract all insights and next steps.
On this table, I can see the company location, the maximum capacity of each possible partner, and the current capacity utilization. Can I assume that we can count on all the free capacity of the partner we end up choosing? For instance, Argentina could give us 50% of their capacity, so we could outsource 50,000 tons. Is that correct?
Precisely.
Okay. If I remember correctly, we had a demand of 250,000 tons and the capacity to produce 160,000 tons per year. That leaves us 90,000 tons short, which we now want to outsource to one partner. I can instantly eliminate Azerbaijan and South Africa. Their maximum capacity is already below the 90,000 tons that we need, so I'd rule them out. Argentina has 100,000 tons of maximum capacity, with the current capacity utilization at 50%, leaving us with 50,000 tons of capacity. Russia has a significant maximum capacity of 500,000 tons, but they are currently using 95% of that, leaving us with about 25,000 tons available. That leaves us with India, which has a maximum capacity of 400,000 tons and a current capacity utilization of 40%, leaving 60% of their capacity available, which is 240,000 tons, more than sufficient for our clients' needs. So, in fact, we only have one option here: India.
Our candidate has done a great job once again by recapping the objective with the exhibit and using quick math to answer it. To summarize, our candidate has discovered that the root cause of the issue is that the factory is already operating at its maximum capacity. In other words, it has a bottleneck. Using a methodical approach, he structured potential reasons for the bottleneck and looked at each one carefully to find the driver. In a case, it's normal to have to structure something more than once. This should remind you that each of the 7 skills may be used multiple times during the interview, as well as during the real projects that you will work on as a consultant in the future. The client is wondering if instead of outsourcing, they should acquire the company in India. What are the pros and cons of each option? Stop for 2 minutes and brainstorm some ideas.
Thank you for the time, Flavio. Here are the pros and cons I could think of. First, I see 4 main arguments in favor of acquiring the company. 1. Increase market share and enhance competitive positioning. 2. Capture economies of scale. 3. Decrease global competition. 4. Win additional clients acquired with the company. On the other hand, the cons of acquiring the company would be: 1. The company might not be available for acquisition, or the price might be unrealistic or out of reach for our client. 2. It would require large funding, increasing risks that the company is not currently exposed to. 3. The acquisition process takes significantly longer than outsourcing production. 4. Integration can be complex, with challenges in cultural fit and regulatory differences between the countries involved. And 5. There is a currency rate risk due to the factory being located in a different country than the parent. For outsourcing, I see 3 positive aspects. 1. No funding required. 2. Fast to start, which is crucial in our case. And 3. Increased bargaining power. The cons of outsourcing would be: 1. It could strengthen a potential competitor in the global market. 2. There is a risk of losing intellectual property if the tubes are special in some way. And 3. It may not be sustainable if the Indian factory faces financial instability.
Let's take a closer look at our candidate's response. First off, notice how the candidate has organized and numbered his points. Second, our candidate wisely avoids over-explaining. Remember from our brainstorming discussions that it's best to keep things straightforward unless the interviewer asks for further clarification. This approach helps keeping the communication crisp and focusing on what's most important. So as you move forward, think about how these techniques can be applied in your own responses to make them as clear and effective as possible.